the last time that I saw you on my podcast, you gave me dating advice. And
what was the advice?
I don't know. It didn't work. I'm still single. And so I thought I'd ask you if you have any other tips. Altucher.
How's it
James.
Going? What's up?
How you living, man?
Good to see you guys.
James, I don't know if you've had this in your life, but you know, like the stage you get to where all your friends, they start to get serious and they start to have kids. And like Omid just got married. I was with him in Mexico. By the way, this is my co-host Omid. Omid used to be a speaker for Tony Robbins.
Oh, okay,
and
cool.
When I told him that, hey man, we're going to have James Altucher on the podcast, he was like, no fucking way. Because he conveniently just read Skip the Line. I don't know how that timed up. We didn't time it.
No, not Skip the Line. I reread Choose Yourself. I've read, it's the second time I've read it. I've also read, I know it's not your book per se, but Idea Generation Machine was like my introduction to you. Been following you on Twitter. I never ever imagined that we would be interviewing you. And then when Nick told me, it was just like, holy shit, man. I was literally just looking through my notes from James like a couple weeks ago.
That's great. Well, and I've also had Tony Robbins on the podcast too, so it's good that you've worked with him.
Well, that was awesome. Actually one of, to your credit, James, that was one of his best episodes because like Tony's one of my favorite people, and he has like a spiel that he does when he's doing press, and you found a way to maneuver around that, I thought, which was really unique and special when you had him on.
And it was hard, like because he first off
he dominates, dude.
He's a giant. He's a gigantic human being in metaphorically and literally. And like you say, it's not like he has a marketing spiel, but he has his thing that he says that's very powerful and very unique. But I had questions. So like when he's going on, and then I met President Clinton and he was asking me I'm like, why would President Clinton, like you were 26 years old at the time, why would the president of the United States call you? And like, but I had to like really yell to stop him.
Yeah.
Because he's in that pattern.
Yeah.
Dude. And it's friggin' intimidating. Have you ever been to, this is random and not on our, questions that we want to ask you, but have you ever been to an event of his? Have you like seen him do his thing?
No, I haven't. And he's invited me to go, but I'm not really an event sort of person is the problem. I'm like,
okay.
I like, don't leave the house very much.
Yeah.
Hey, me too.
Well, you're just married and you're about to start having kids, so get used to it.
Yeah. Omid's lying. He's just trying to build rapport. He was just in. Where were you? You were just at an event, Omid.
I rarely leave though, but it was I like electronic music, so I was at a music festival for my birthday.
Oh, cool.
And that was in Ohio. But as like it was one of my last ones that I want to go for a while, so just kind of had to end it with a bang.
What kind of music was it?
Electronic music, but primarily this one, I like bass music, so a little bit heavier. I grew up listening to like metal, so I'm about to turn 30 and I've been like evaluating my entire life. And as I'm getting older, I used to go to festivals since I was like in high school. And then now I'm kind of like, okay, last one for a bit. So
that's good. Yeah. You never know. You never know what's going to happen. I'm going on a Rage Against the Machine phase.
Oh, let's go.
That's all I'm listening to.
Without further ado, I'm going to bolster us into the conversation. So James, all to say, it's really good to see you, man, and thank you for making time. I told Jay, and I'll tell you again, you're one of my favorite people. I'm not saying that to blow smoke or to placate or to be falsely nice. You have this unfathomable ability to keep it so real. And just to be honest, like it shows up in your writing. You just write whatever the hell you want. You kind of say what you feel. And you're really thoughtful. Like you're not just spewing garbage out into the world. And thank you for what you do, man. And sincerely, thank you for finding a little time for us today, brother. We appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate the comments you just said. If you think about it, there's just so much like bullshit out there, right? Like everybody wants to be the king. And so like the latest thing this past year or so is, okay, I just read 27 books by Plato. Here are the 7 things I learned, so you don't have to read them. And then they'll do a thread and get like, 1 million follows, and and then they're like, then they write a book on leadership, leadership according to Plato. And I'm so sick of books about leadership. No offense if either of you wrote a book.
No, we don't have any books about leadership.
Like enough
I'm
already.
A follower.
Yeah. There's first off, well, I could go on and on about that. Let's move
no,
on.
actually, well, no. I want to ask you something about that.
Yeah.
Because later, I'll ask you now because it's appropriate. Like, what do you what are your thoughts on content? Like, why do you make content? Because I don't think that you make content to be popular like a lot of people. Like, I don't think that that's your MO. And so I want to know, why do you make content, and where do you feel that content is in like the worldview right now? And also, does it actually matter for, a personal brand and a business anymore, or is that overstated? So kind of 3 questions at once, but I think it piggybacks off of what you were saying.
Let's dissect the words you used in order to answer that. So make content and personal brand.
Okay.
I want to, and this is not, I want to, it's like an open discussion because
Okay, let's do it.
I always think about these words. So like one time, this is like in 2012, I think. So a long time ago, I was at a conference and I said, I don't like the phrase personal brand, because if you think about a brand, like let's say one of the most powerful brands out there is Coca-Cola. Well, we know there's, the feeling of Coca-Cola, like, oh, everyone's like, rollerblading around, everyone's beautiful, they're having a Coke, like spraying everywhere. It's like this gigantic orgasm in the app. But then there's the reality, which is, okay, as Steve Jobs referred to Pepsi Cola, it's sugared water. It's like brown sugared water. Yeah. And so there's the reality, and then there's the brand, which is the mythology of what Coca-Cola is. And it's all kind of bullshit, the gap between the reality and the brand. Yeah. So then I was thinking, well, what's a personal brand? Like, do people say personal brand because it's not really who they are? Like,
oh, wow.
I'm going to be really like,
interesting.
You might say like, oh, I'm, XYZ, but I'm going to have a personal brand that's, about leadership, and I help CEOs transform their, businesses through my leadership coaching. So this is what I'm always trying to understand, is that is a personal brand somehow different than like a corporate brand? A corporate brand's always bullshit, but a personal brand is that not bullshit in some way? Huh. And I don't know the answer. So I've never thought of myself as having a personal brand, like,
but you have one though. But you have one.
Yeah, and I guess that's true. So I guess that's the thing. Like, it's not like I go around saying, "Oh, I can't do that because it's not on brand for me." Like, so I feel like when you have a brand, you have to stick to the brand. Like even in the legal world, okay, Coca-Cola has a logo. If they do not use if they change their logo or on a set of ads, if they use a wrong logo, then legally the logo's out the door because it's part of their brand. And if you go off brand, anyone else can use your logo now.
Yeah.
And so that's like the law. So is brand the same thing? Like, you have to suddenly when you have a brand, you have to stay in that lane and not leave it because then it's off brand.
Yeah. That's powerful.
Okay. So then I know Omid has a question, but I'll just come back to the initial question, which is the nucleus here. I think I agree with you, James. Although I'm not entirely I don't know what the exact point was, but I like the direction of where you're going with it. My question for you is, why do you make content then? Is it in you, like, that you just say, I just friggin' love doing this?
Right. And that's the other phrase I wanted to hone in on.
Okay. Yeah.
So did Dostoevsky make content? I don't know.
Give me another example.
Who wrote the James Bond movies and the novels? Did Ian Fleming make content, or did he write great,
making art, novels? Bro?
Damn.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, did Vincent Van Gogh go around saying, "Oh, I'm going to make content today"?
Damn.
Like, I'm gonna paint something and make content. No, like, these people spent years learning a craft, right? And for years they did very poorly at it, but some kind of a combination of ignorance and arrogance kept them going, thinking that they could potentially be good at something they totally sucked at. Like, nobody is a good writer the first words they write. Nobody is a good artist the first time they paint. No one's a good actor the first time they act. So, but you have to have like some sort of arrogance plus ignorance that you could be good at this thing you love doing. It's just that the world doesn't see how good I am yet. So that fools you into keep on doing it, and you keep on doing it. I think today, if you're good writer and you get a little bit of lucky, you could be, some writers are very successful while they're still alive. And like J.K. Rowling is a great example. But I don't think even she went around and said, okay, I've got to make content today. What should it be? Well, I guess I'm going to write a novel about this boy who's a wizard. So like I really wanted to be a writer, and I spent a lot of time, like I spent years writing. My mission was 3,000 words a day, every single day. And I did this for years and years and years. And it was all, looking back on it now, it was all horrible. And I never realized that. Even though like I would write a novel, for instance, and I would send it out to 40 publishers and agents and not even get a response back. Like nobody was like, hey, this is not a right fit for us, but keep going. You got something here. Nobody even gave me a nice word. And I did that for years and years and years. And I was thrown out of graduate school because I was writing every single day, and it had nothing. I was going to graduate school for computer science, so it had nothing to do with what I was studying. And then I just took nothing jobs. So my time was free to write, and I'd wake up early. I remember one time I changed my sleeping schedule a little bit. I would sleep from 4 to 8 in the afternoon and 4 to 8 in the morning, so I could write from like midnight to 4 and from like noon to 4. And then there was still like a little time to hang out with friends, like in the middle there for dinner. And I was always doing these experiments so I could write more. And then I did start writing professionally when I was writing it for a long time. For about 10 years, I was writing about stocks and finance and other things that I wasn't really that in love with at the time, but it was something. It was a way I could write. And then finally, after the Great Recession, 2008, 2009. Nobody really wanted me to write about finance. Finance was like dead, and I was an optimist. So during the Great Recession, everybody thought capitalism was dead. So I stopped appearing on CNBC and Fox Business and Bloomberg. Like nobody really wanted me for a little while. And so I was just like, screw it. I don't care. I'm just going to write whatever I can. And then suddenly, after all those years of writing every single day, and then kind of getting used to meeting a deadline with the finance stuff, suddenly now I could write, and people were responding to it. I wrote about myself and wrote about going broke and wrote about failing and wrote stories about, things that were happening to me, and just like, almost random stuff. But finally I had this elusive skill that I had spent maybe 2 decades trying to develop. And that for me was a blessing that, I finally, like all the books I had read. So in addition to writing 3,000 words a day, I was probably reading a book a day, and like not just any books, but like really great writing. Like writers are the best short story writers are the best writers out there. And so I would read the best short story writers, and I did that for years and years. And finally, it all seemed to click. And I noticed when I started writing more story driven, but real life stories, all of a sudden my audience like 10x'd, because people preferred that much more than they preferred, well, here's the latest analysis of Apple's stock, which I was really good at that too. Like, stocks would go up when I would write about them, but that wasn't interesting to me. And what was interesting to me was real writing. And then suddenly, when I didn't care anymore what anybody thought, like in the finance world, I just dived into writing what I considered real writing. And real writing is writing about suffering and writing about pain. And maybe there's an optimistic thread going through that, so that, the hero comes out on the other side. And most people don't. Like everybody became a writer when Medium, Huffington Post, LinkedIn, all these things will publish your post. So, but you can see that a lot of people don't have the skill. They don't tell a story, or they don't really know how to be vulnerable in their writing. And that's real writing, is when you put you stab yourself in the back as opposed to stabbing other people in the back. And then that brings your writing to life, and understanding like the pacing of writing, and nobody had that. So suddenly I was writing for this community of people who don't normally read like real good writing, but I was writing things they were interested in a style of a writer. And that's when it really, shifted for me. And then I started writing every single day, those kind of posts and articles, things that people could really, hang their hat on, is like, oh, I want to read this guy because he went through things that I relate to, and I want to survive, going broke or being suicidal or being depressed or anxious, or I want to make a lot of money, or whatever it was I was writing about that day, like, whatever story.
I'm gonna go. I have so much to say. I've been dominating, so I'll go to Omid.
Appreciate that, James. That was amazing. Hearing your perspective on this is blowing my mind because it's resonating with me and what I'm trying to do. I went to my first Tony event when I was 12, and it was from there when I first saw him speaking. I told myself, I was like, wow, this guy gets to learn and he gets paid to like teach. That's the coolest shit. I want to do that. And then since then, I've been in a process of attempting to build a quote unquote personal brand, but just being able to share my lessons that I'm learning throughout life. And I have not been able to nail it in terms of consistency because I guess I don't have that real-time feedback to keep going. So how did you just put your head down and just say, I'm going to write 3,000 words every single day indefinitely?
Yeah. And I had nothing but bad feedback for years and years and years. Like, I remember one time I wrote a whole novel, and I mean, when you're writing 3,000 words a day, that's like, a million words a year almost. So you're writing, I was writing tons of stuff, like dozens and dozens and dozens of short stories, novels, like all of it bad. I remember one time I wrote a novel, gave it to my girlfriend to read, and then she read it and she said, I loved it. It was great. And I'm like, well, how did it end? And she couldn't tell me how it ended. She felt so bad, she started crying. And,
oh my God.
It was, but I was upset. Like, how could you not know the ending? You just finished it. How could you not know the ending? But I was really bad. And again, like, this is why I feel funny about phrases like make content and personal brand. And I get where you're coming from. Like, not that there's anything wrong with that, but like, what you really have to ask is, who are you and why do you do the things you do? And why now are you doing the things you do? So like, I was someone who...
Those are great questions.
Yeah. Like, I was someone who like went broke, was depressed, had all these real... Like, I could never figure out what I wanted to do with my life, like many other people, right? And so, but I would take my life to extremes in many situations, and that would cause me either a lot of suffering or a lot of euphoria or whatever. So why do I do this though? Like, what is it that I'm looking for? Like, what insecurities do I have that drives me to try to turn $10 million into $100 million and then end up with $0? Like, why would I do something so stupid like that? Like, why me? And then why now do I get the chance to write about this? Well, nobody's really, this was a period no one was really interested in any of my finance stuff at that moment. And I realized I wasn't even interested in it at that moment. I wanted to write like
life stuff.
So these three questions are really important. Like, it can't just be like, well, I want to be a public speaker, so I better learn about leadership and then how to market myself and, so that companies hire me to speak. Like, it's like, what have you been through? How can you transform it into art? Not content, but like art. And I say it that way, not in a pretentious way, but like, everybody's producing content. Oh, okay, here's what, Ryan Holiday did the Stoics, so let's pick another philosophical school, like existentialists. Here's 10 things, why leadership is like existentialism, and you build a brand, blah, blah, blah. But,
it's soulless though. It's soulless. Like
it could be like Ryan Holiday.
No. I'm not saying Ryan's soulless, but like the act of just like copy pasting, it's soulless. I think that's the difference between content and art that you're highlighting.
Yeah, like you could start off let's say you did want to write something about, I don't know, existential. You could start off saying like, sometimes it seems all pointless. Like, why should I make money? Why is it just because I want to have a lot of sex and people with a lot of money have more sex, it seems? Or like why, obviously I'm just going to die and nothing's going to happen, or maybe the religious people are right, but there's no way to know. And so one day I thought like I was going to kill myself because there was no point at all. And my girlfriend just broke up with me. So, and then I lost my job. So, but then I picked up, I don't know, Sartre, and one line he said made me do something really crazy that day, and it changed my life. And then you start your story, and it's more of like a work of art that we're following you on this journey. You know, Odysseus's journey.
Yeah. So I have a question, but first, Omid, for God's sake, check the chat on Squadcast.
Dude, I've been chatting you this whole time. Do you not? We have a chat.
I can't see anything. So this is mine and Omid's dichotomy. We have a chat open while we do this, so that way we could we know where to go next. Because otherwise, it's impossible.
That's a good idea, Jay. We should totally do that.
Where are you? Where are you chatting me? Are you chatting me on Squadcast, Omid?
Yeah, on direct chat on Squadcast.
So am I. I can't see anything. You can't see any of my stuff too, can you?
No. We have two chats. We have. There we go.
Oh, you know what? You're not in this chat. It's just me talking to myself. All right. So funny. Can you see that, Omid?
Yeah, you're so funny.
All right. I sent you like 15 chats.
I sent
okay. All right. Also. All right. James, sorry about that. Sorry you had to see us fight.
Man, you guys
I do have
fighting. So
I do have one final question on the art.
Yeah. Please. Yeah.
So just to wrap it all together, there's this common theme around art, and I mean you're on Twitter as well, so you know how it's like people are trying to grow on Twitter, and then with blogs, a lot of it comes down to like niching down. But from what I'm understanding from what you're saying, it's like you're just kind of sharing your life experiences, so you essentially become your own a niche of one. Whatever you're interested in becomes your niche. It's kind of like how Joe Rogan, his thing is like DMT and aliens and fighting, but it's like he didn't say I'm going to go pick these niches. He just went through what he's interested in. What's your take on like niching down?
Yeah, it's really interesting because John Lee Dumas, who has this podcast, Entrepreneurs on Fire, or something like that, he once told me you got to niche down twice. So, okay, you're interested in doing a podcast about lawyers, but now you're going to do a podcast about divorce lawyers. Like then you'll get a really loyal audience of divorce lawyers, and that's success. And I get it. Like, I think sometimes what holds me back is I don't niche down. So like, for instance, take this election. Whenever I post something about the election, whether it's a Republican take or a Democratic take, suddenly it's like this enormous surge of dopamine because everybody responds. And it's like, I remember in 2020, I posted something positive about Andrew Yang, and suddenly like 1 million Yang Gang people, hashtag Yang Gang, it was like all loving me. And
Yang is so awesome. Yang's such a good person, by the way.
He is, and he came on the podcast. He's a great guy.
I saw that episode. That was great.
And then another time I posted something not negative, but like here's how Andrew Yang could have done better in the debate. But it was a little negative. So suddenly the Yang Gang hated me. And so I was getting the opposite of dopamine. And I could see the benefit of niching down because, like, let's say I just did a podcast at that time about Andrew Yang. It would have like the entire Yang Gang listening to every episode. But so I think there's benefits to that from a business point of view. But like you say, people are interested in many things. And, I don't know. I don't know. I'm torn because I do like, it would be great to have a podcast as big as Joe Rogan's, for instance. And as you point out, he doesn't really niche down. I think he's maybe when he first started, he focused on comedy or MMA or something like that. But I mean, he's a comedian from the beginning. The guys like that, they're comedians. But I'm always interested in different things. Like I for instance, stand-up comedy. I did stand-up comedy for 6 years, and I had a lot of comedians on because I was really interested in it. And in general, I'm interested in peak performance because, like, for instance, when I was younger, I was a chess master, and then I stopped playing for 25 years. And now as an older person, I'm trying to see, can I still achieve the skill of mastery in this domain? And so really studying peak performance, like people like Tony Robbins or Richard Branson or, Danica Patrick or whatever. And so I get a lot of peak performers on, but there's no thread. I'm not in a niche, but I don't know what it should be or not. I don't know.
I have two questions for you. how long do we have you for?
I'm here forever. Like,
okay.
I could do it.
Yeah. Hashtag on.
He's moving in.
Because James, when I say I'm curious about a lot of stuff that I want your take on, I really mean it. I'm also, my DMs are blowing up in like a chat right now, so I'm just going to hide those alerts. But okay, so long time, I wanted on this thread, and this is my last question on this note, I wanted to be a speaker. What held me back in the early days was I thought that pursuit was, for me, a little empty, not for anybody else, for me, because I was like, oh, to be a speaker. And then I would go and I would actually try. I like spoke at like a few classrooms and stuff. I would like call
What'd you speak about?
Oh, I spoke about, that was the issue, that was actually the issue. I was like, I just feel like I'm just spewing stuff because I said I want to be a speaker. The thing is, I realized through doing that, I said, this is the wrong goal. The goal is to have something to say and to care enough to want to share it and craft something around that. And so I was like, oh, I guess I don't have much to say right now, this point in my life. I've seen people like Tony Robbins and stuff. I said, oh, I want to be them. I don't have anything meaningful to say. So it all feels empty coming out. And guess what? People don't like that. They can sense it. So like, what has been your muse over the course of your, life as an artist, as far as your writing and as far as your speaking? Has it always just been, oh, this is what's interesting to me, and so I'll share it? And like, did you just, is it, I can overthink things sometimes. And so is it overthinking it to say, is it just as simple as saying, I'm interested in this, I'm actually going to do research? Most people, frankly, they actually just don't research stuff. And so if I just research it a bit / a little bit more than everybody else, I'll kind of be an expert and then I can speak on it. I'm almost 30 now and I actually have real things to say, which is going to sound dumb maybe in a few years when I think I have different real things to say. But
yeah, it's always going to change.
Yeah. But my question for you is like, what's your muse and how do you view that medium? Because I hated the feeling of doing things like from an empty place and doing it for like a false goal. So I would love to know how you conceive that, because I think you're a great thinker.
Yeah. And I think, look, it's like I said about writing. At first, it was really bad because I feel like I had nothing to say and I didn't have the skill. I didn't know how to say it and I didn't know what to say.
Okay. Yeah.
And so it was just like derivative and it was just bad writing, and bad writing comes across as like maybe arrogance. And but like with speaking, it's really important. Like, who are you, and why do you do the things you do, and why now? Like, how did you survive till now? Why now you want to speak? These are really important questions. And then that's again the content, the material. But then there's the skill of speaking, which also is very difficult. Like, to be a great speaker, some people are great speakers, like Tony Robbins is a great speaker. Some people not as great speakers.
Yep.
So for instance, I love Peter Diamandis. I've never really saw him speak.
Yeah.
But he's been on my podcast maybe like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
And he's really fascinated by what's in the future, and not like 100 years in the future, but like what is futuristic happening right now. Mm-hmm. And so even that content is so interesting that even if he wasn't a great speaker, and my guess is he's not as good as Tony Robbins, but he's probably decent. Yeah. And, he would still be able to hold people's attention just by, oh, here's, by the way, this chip you could put in your brain so you could see things around on the other side of the world or whatever. Mm-hmm. Here's a flying car that I was in yesterday. And, so he's got like, his content could overcome, any. Again, I've never seen him speak, so I'm just using it as an example. But if he didn't have all the skills in speaking, he still has great content. So there's this, give and take there a little bit. But, this is why I got interested in stand-up comedy, is that, think about it, no one is a better public speaker than a really good stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
Because they have to basically make a bunch of drunk Swedish people laugh in the middle of the night on demand. And they have to make them laugh every 15 seconds roughly. So that's really hard. Like, most public speakers cannot do that. And yet comedians, they know how to move their body. They know how to make voices. They know how to raise their eyebrows or move around the stage. And they're good at telling, they know how to write jokes and write good material. So like when I have to give a talk, I always watch, sometimes for days beforehand, I'll watch stand-up comedy just to kind of get that in my brain. Like, I program my brain. It's like a short-term shot, and then I did it for many years. So I got that doubly. So it's like doing stand-up comedy probably was, what do they say? It's like a cheat code. Like it's like it 10x'd my stand-up. I mean, my public speaking ability. Like I was doing public speaking for a long time, but now it's like a no-brainer.
Wow.
Like, so I would definitely recommend like studying comedy to be a public speaker. But in terms of like what you want to speak about, again, like what do you want to speak about? You can even speak about everything I've learned from 100 episodes of my podcast, and then in terms of like what the muse is, this is where you find the muse. Like what really is like what do you read that fascinates you? So like I remember one time I read a book about day traders. This is like in 2000. I read a book about day traders, and then suddenly I was like fascinated. Like I want to be like that. And then I became obsessed. Like all I wanted to do was read about finance and day trading. And then I became a day trader, and then I started a hedge fund. Like because it was just like I was obsessed. And so the same thing with writing. Like I was obsessed, or stand up. I was obsessed. Chess right now, I'm obsessed. So like what that's the thing you want to. And so, okay, no one wants to hear me give a talk about chess. So, okay, I'll broaden it out a little bit. Mastery and peak performance. How do you get good at something? Or I'm not going to give a talk about writing, but maybe I'll give a talk about communicating. Or maybe I'm not going to give a talk about finance, but I'll give a talk about maybe the psychology of being an investor and the psychology of money. And, because that's something I'm more interested in now. And, so you just have to figure out like what part of the bookstore could you go to where you'll just read every book in that section of the bookstore.
Follow your curiosity, and just people that are interesting are people that are interested, and just being interested and sharing that I think is amazing from what you're saying. You also said something that segues into something Nick and I are really curious on. You mentioned talking around mastery. I feel like something that you have done very well in your life is you're fucking good at so many things that you would do. Like you're like, I want to go do this, and then you become a master at that, and then you become a master at this. And there's this notion of the one thing, like pick one thing and commit your life to that and only do that. But I feel like you're contrarian in a way where you don't do that, and you follow your curiosities, just as you mentioned, and you do so well in all of it. How do you do so well in the things that you want to do? And
this is again, like, this is one of these things, there's really no answer, because I often regret like not just doing one thing.
Oh,
like,
wow.
Like for instance, I stopped playing chess for 25 years. What if I had kept playing it? Or I stopped, because I didn't really enjoy running a hedge fund, I stopped doing that in order to write. And what if I had moved when all my tech friends moved from New York City to Silicon Valley? What if I moved with them? They became investors in Uber and are billionaires. So like, I just didn't really, on the one side, I got good at a lot of different things. Like I did comedy for 6 years, but to get really good at it, you have to do it for 20 years. And so I never really got in the top, of the world at something. Maybe the closest, I'd probably put the most hours into just sheer writing. But then again, you look at like the tennis world. Okay, the top 10 make a great living. Okay, maybe the top 20. But if you're number 150, now let's say 100 million people around the world play tennis. If you're even number 150 out of 150 million, you're broke and you're depressed, right? Because it's like, why can't you be in the top 10? And I see this in the chess world. Like, number one in the world is great. Like,
who is that? But what's his name?
Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah, Magnus Carlsen.
Okay,
amazing player, the best player in history. And he makes a great living. He's the best chess. Like 1 billion people play chess, and he's number one of those billion.
That's so nuts.
And I've spoken to various people who have been number 2 in the world, and they're just not that happy about it. Like, because they can't be number 1. He's like so far ahead of everybody. Now he's getting a little older. We'll see if he keeps the throne, but no matter what, he's the number 1 in all history. So sometimes I think, okay, and this is where the niching down comes in. Sometimes you could be the best at an intersection of things. So maybe I might be the best at the intersection of, I don't know, finance and writing. Okay, so now I don't have to be the best finance guy, but I'm the best at the intersection of finance and writing. I might be in the top, 1% of that intersection. And which is not like being in the top 1% of something's different than being in the top 10 in the world of something. Maybe again, 100 million people might be finance professionals who write, and then I have to be in the top million to be in the top 1% of that. And I'm probably closer to top 0.001% of that intersection. But other things, like I'm not necessarily a great comedian. I did it for 6 years, but that doesn't put me in the category of like the best. But I'm also a public speaker in the business world. So at the intersection of comedy and business, I'm definitely among the best.
You're crushing that for sure. There's not a lot of people in business that are funny.
Yeah. So you could find your intersections too. This is sort of another way of saying niching down, I guess. But you find like that intersection of things where you're among the best in the world, and uniquely you're among the best in the world. Because maybe that intersection is not so big, but it could be an area that a lot of people are interested in. So again, that's sort of the niching down. But I think figure out all the different intersections where you live, and that's what you're the best at, and you feel good doing it, and you become an expert.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you dead on. One thing, is it a myth? Agree or disagree? Like choose one thing and pursue for your life? Because I think that the question that really stands, James, is what's the objective? What are you doing this for? What's the outcome? What's the result that you want? If the result is mastery, sure, I think you have a point in saying, hey, maybe sticking with one thing is probably the right thing. If it's generally fulfillment in life, I don't know if one thing is the answer to that. I don't know. Maybe for some people it is. If it's money, maybe. But what's your take? Like, is one thing a myth? Because while you say choosing one thing might have benefited you, you might have been a chess grandmaster, maybe number one in the world or whatever. You're also really successful. Like you haven't done bad for sure.
Yeah. And because I haven't done just one thing, and I have this intersection of lots of things that it's contributed to my success, let's say financial success, because people don't want to do business with yet another hedge fund manager or yet another guy who, has just been starting businesses. Oh, he's a chess master, or he did stand-up comedy, or he wrote all these books. Like, so if you kind of make the one thing kind of the intersection of all the things you're fascinated by, that also is another way of doing the one thing, but you're just you're defining the intersection as that's your one thing. And so, yes, I'm glad ultimately I didn't spend my whole life playing chess, because most of those people who did are very unhappy people. Like they're 50 years old. They're too old now to really play at the highest level, and they got to figure it out, like what they're going to do. And same thing with, sports. You see a lot of, if a sport doesn't make you a millionaire, like some guy who's ranked 200th in the world in tennis, he's just going to be the pro at a tennis club ultimately, when he's older. And that's what he's got to do.
Man.
And, so you have, I think doing just one thing in academia, it sometimes works like, I'm going to just do mathematics for my whole life. And then you get to be a tenured professor, and you get to mentor a lot of students, and they thank you in their PhD theses, and you get known as someone who really created a lot of other great mathematicians because you passed on your skill. But I think it's very rare to just do one thing, and most people aren't interested in the same thing for 50 years.
Yeah, it's not
like
practical.
I don't think I was. I mean, I was interested in writing, then I was interested in computer, like programming computers. Like I was a computer programmer for a really long time. I was interested in investing and day trading and running a hedge fund and venture capital. I was interested in comedy and chess and, again, writing. And so, I don't know what I would, if I had to do one thing, I think I would have been miserable. In fact, you couldn't keep me from doing one thing. Like I was in graduate school for computer science, and I was at one of the top schools in the world for it. And I just lost interest. I only wanted to write.
Yes.
And eventually they had to throw me out. And the dean who wrote the letter throwing me out, like 2 years after I was thrown out, I ran into him in a cafe, and I was studying, and this is in my 20s, I was studying a chess book. And he said, "Hey, I'm interested in learning chess. Can I have lessons from you?" And the dean who threw me out of grad school, I just saw him this past weekend.
I'm reading a book right now called Range: Why Generalists Thrive in a Specialized
David
World.
Epstein.
Yeah. Have you read it?
Yeah, it's very good.
Oh,
and
man.
he talks about that. So he was a geologist who also was interested in sports. So if you take the intersection of that, he is the only writer at Sports Illustrated who kind of has a scientific take on his writing.
Wow. Yeah.
Like he won in that intersection. He's the leader in that intersection.
That's amazing that you read it. Yeah. Everything you're saying right now is it is triggering what I'm learning from that book. I was literally reading it right before our call. And then I want to pass it off to Nick because I know he has a burning question.
Okay. So I'm going to bolster us into the third and kind of final sect here. I wanted to talk with you about money. And so I remember listening to it. I tried to find it earlier because I was writing a post about you saying, hey, we're going to talk to James today. And I had a really hard time finding it. During COVID, or maybe after you made a podcast that I never forgot. And I've cited it again and again. And you were like, there's 3 skills to money. There is the skill of saving money. There's a skill of earning money. Then there's a skill of growing money. Just because you have one skill does not mean that you have any of the other 3. You have to work on them independently.
Right. And making it, keeping it, growing it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so, okay, I have one question, which is for right now, because you have been, for people who don't know James, he's, serial entrepreneur. You've exited many companies. Also, you've been public about this. A lot of the companies you started didn't work, but that led you to what really worked. And you're still an entrepreneur to this day. It's in your blood. It's kind of woven into you. How are you, what do you have going on right now? Because I couldn't really find anything right now, business-wise. Are you, doing a business, or is it mainly, the brand that you do kind of ad deals with? Is that what you're doing right now on a money stand? I'm curious to know how you treat this right now, where you're at this stage in your life. And then I have some deeper questions about, how do you save it? And then how do you earn it? How do you grow it? Type of thing.
Yeah. So these are all really great questions.
Are you okay with me asking that, by the way? You don't have to
answer.
Okay, cool.
I have no problem with anything. Making it was what I was always good at. And keeping it and growing it were sometimes problems for me, because I would take really elaborate risks and try to make more, not realizing that the risk was too great, and so I would not be able to keep it. It's a big danger with money to think that you're smart about money. Nobody is smart about money. It's very, very difficult, and so you have to really respect the money. Think about, for every dollar, how many hours of not just work, but building up the skills it took to earn that dollar. You have to really respect it and not risk it inappropriately. But in order to make more money, you have to take some risks. So you have to really have a big understanding of what are the risks involved. So, so right now, and by the way, whenever I started a business about a topic I didn't know anything about, it always failed. But when I started businesses about topics that I knew a lot about, they succeeded.
Oh, wow.
And so this guides my investing. So for instance, I'll give an example. One time I was, a friend of mine had a business and he was raising some money. And, and I like the industry, but I didn't know whether he would succeed or fail. Who knows? But he said, and Peter Thiel is also investing in this round. And he also mentioned Mark Pincus, who's another big investor. But he said Peter Thiel, and I'm like, okay, I'm in. Because I know Peter Thiel is smarter than me at investing. And Peter Thiel's had a lot more success than me. He was the first investor in Facebook, for instance. And he co-founder of Palantir and ran a very successful hedge fund. So when I heard Peter Thiel was going in, I said, I'm in. So my whole style of investing is to know that I am not the smartest person. So I need smarter people than me to be in an investment in order for me to go in.
Nice.
And I diversify not by sector, but by the people I follow into deals. So if somebody's another deal I'm in is also a tech deal, it's a chip company, and the number 2 guy from Applied Materials, which is a big chip company, he quit Applied Materials and joined this company. So I'm like, okay, this guy's smarter than me. And he gave up his whole career where he was the number 2 guy making tens of millions of dollars a year and to join this startup. So, okay, he's banking the finale of his career on this startup. So, okay, I'm in. I don't really have to do due diligence behind that. I don't know. there's lots of other examples, but so in terms of like what I do now, I mean, yes, I write and I have a podcast and they're doing very well, but that doesn't really, writing, by the way, unless you're like J.K. Rowling, doesn't really make money. You have to have other reasons
you got to sell
write
products
if you're going to do it professionally. Yeah. Or you have to kind of get a reputation so people invite you to do things and be a part of things and so on. So I do several things. One is I always invest in private deals. The most money I've ever made is by investing in other entrepreneurs. Well, using this approach of I'm not very smart, so keep the investment small and invest with someone smarter than me. And that is a strategy that works over time. Sometimes it takes a long time, but that works. And like seeds you plant 10 years ago will suddenly bloom and you'll make millions of dollars that it just be like a surprise. And then also I did start a financial, because I was very good at, I mean, I spent many years running a hedge fund and also writing about stocks. I started and I've written books about investing and so on. I started a financial research service like in 2015 called Choose Yourself Media. I sold it around 2017, but I'm still like the face of it. And I still come up with the ideas. And I have a lot of really great analysts who also write for this service, like really great people. And so, that turned into like, I'm no longer the owner of it, but I have a profit share. Like that turned into, I mean, it'll do well over 100 million in revenues this year. And
wait, what does that do? Wait, hold on. What does Choose? I thought when I read Choose Yourself Media, I thought that was, because I was researching, I thought that was like just the media umbrella that you just kind of did all like the podcast and the newsletter and your writing underneath. I didn't realize it was financial servicing.
Well, it could mean different things, like depending on when I was describing something as Choose Yourself Media. And now it's not called Choose Yourself Media. Now it's part of a bigger entity. But like my particular franchise is still my franchise because they have to profit share me on my stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
And again, I still help with the stock picks but again, there's very, very many really talented, good people working there. And
what do they do? What do they do?
So for instance, we have a product. Like I'm a big fan of crypto. So we have a product that analyzes smaller cryptos, which ones are going to succeed, which ones are going to fail, which ones are just, shit coins, and which ones are like here to stay because they're actually being used and they have a function that society needs. And then people subscribe to see what our recommendations are so they could maybe invest in them. And we've had very good picks. For instance, we have crypto, we have microcaps, we have AI, we have an options trading service. And so people subscribe and they're doing very well, or else they wouldn't keep subscribing. And, the business is again, surviving and hiring more people. And
dude, you're Omid, he sent this, and so I'll give him the credit. He said humble like Neil Patel, because we had on Neil Patel. I don't know if you know Neil.
Yeah.
And he was so humble in the sense where he would be really open about like money and stuff, which I really appreciate, because I never asked to pry because I'm not interested in probing. No one really has like a good like foundation for, okay, what's a good amount of money, what's enough. And so I like to ask for me, because I'm like,
Same.
The endless pursuit of earning is kind of useless. But yeah, I wanted to, oh no, it sounds like you're mincing thoughts there. I don't want to, go ahead.
No, but that's interesting. Like I never set out to make $1 billion. Like if I really was interested in making $1 billion, I wouldn't have spent 5 or 6 years doing nothing but, writing the articles that became Choose Yourself, for instance, the book Choose Yourself. Or I certainly wouldn't do a podcast if I was, hungry to make $1 billion. Because as you guys know, a podcast is not making $1 billion. Or I wouldn't have tried stand-up comedy. Like when I was doing stand-up comedy, it was like, I was performing every night. I was performing 6 nights a week, sometimes 2 times a night.
Wow.
And I was traveling around, and you don't make any money. I even bought a comedy club just so and unfairly to guarantee that I'm going to get on stage whenever I want.
It's a flex.
Because it's hard in New York City. It's hard to get on stage. There's 5,000 comedians in New York City, and there's only so many stages. So I had to buy my comedy club to make sure I get on stage.
Do you still own it?
No. During the pandemic, I left New York City and sold my part of the comedy club.
Are you back in New York now?
No. Although I visit there a lot, my kids are there.
Where do you where do you live now?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
Nice.
Oh, let's go.
Hence my Southern accent.
Yeah. I can tell, man. So you and Jay are in the same area of the world.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I've always often so basically I passively, try to make a lot of money by doing this investing. Like, oh, here's a good deal, I'll invest, and hopefully 5 years from now I get a return on it. And so I sort of think, I always go back and forth on what's the right number and what would I be satisfied with. And the number changes because you get married, you have kids, you get a house, all this sort of thing. I think the right number is probably, and initially when I sold my first business, I made $15 million. And that was at that time in the year 1998, that was definitely higher than my number. And then I lost all of it. Like I went down to $143 in my bank account.
Whoa.
And then I made it again and lost it again. And then I made it again. And, now I'm trying to keep it and grow it. And it's difficult. It's a difficult thing. But I think the number is probably the quote unquote number is between 20 and 30 million.
Oh my God. That's what Felix Dennis says in How to Get Rich, the founder of Maxim Magazine, in his book.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
is that 20, 30 million like in the bank cash, or like what is that? Or is that?
Yeah, kind of in the bank cash. Or stocks and liquid investments.
Okay.
And the reason I say 20 million is because what can you really rely on as a decent return on your money? If
the index probably.
Well, no, because are you really going to put all your money in the stock market index? Like that would be kind of a crazy thing to do, because sometimes the stock market goes down 50%. So let's say you have 20 million. Are you going to put it all in the stock market index? And then when it goes down 50%, it's not like you'll say, oh, it always goes back. When the market goes down 50%, there's blood in the streets. Like people are jumping off buildings. So you're going to be scared. That's really like, if you have 20 million, why would you put yourself in a situation where you're going to be terrified? So in order to diversify properly, and let's say you're not a professional investor, so you're not really doing private deals and all this kind of stuff, you're probably only going to make like 2 or 3%. And, so 20 million gets you, like 400,000 a year, 500,000 a year, maybe. And let's say that's after taxes. So, okay, that's a decent amount for if you have the big house, if you're taking big vacations, and you're flying first class everywhere, or occasionally flying private, and you're able to splurge on all of your interests. So, for instance, I was able to, I'm interested in comedy. I'm going to buy part of a comedy club. Okay, so that's a horrible investment, but sometimes you splurge, and it turns out I got lucky. I made back everything. I didn't make any money on it, but I didn't lose any money either, which is very rare for a comedy club. And but I think 20 is about the right number. Can you survive and live the rest of your life on 10? Of course. Can you survive and live the rest of your life on 5? Of course. But 20 is where you never have to think about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that.
Now 100 is, okay, I really want my own private jet. I really want, $1 million car. Blah, blah, blah.
Dude, it's a different game.
You don't really need that.
So. I met this billionaire once, and he's one of the best people I know, like value wise. And he's in like private equity. That's what he does. He's a PE guy. And so he takes companies public, but it's all for like really important things. My accountant's calling me. Ignore. And so, but that being said, James, I have a burning question. Omid and I are going back and forth. He's like, can I go? I was like, oh dude, I have one, and then you could go. Okay, this is all fine and well. I'm still trying to make my first million. That's kind of like on like the path that I'm on. And so like, okay, earning money 101. How would you advise me and Omid to make our first million? And obviously, like I have a company, and if you want context, I could give you context, but I think maybe even more like general stuff would be the idea that we're looking for. So anybody listening could get your take on that. Maybe it's even a bad goal to make $1 million. If like, I'm curious to know what you think.
Yeah. I mean, I've kind of always stumbled into the businesses that I've started. But
it's a great stumble.
Like think about every business. Every business in the world has 3 components. There's there's something that there's an excess supply of on one side. There's people who want the excess supply. And then there's the platform in the middle that mediates between the people who want the supply and people who have the supply. So Uber, there's an excess supply of empty car seats. There's a bunch of people who on occasion need to be sitting in an empty car seat. And Uber, the business, is the platform that mediates between the two things. Airbnb is like that. Oh, I'm going away. My home can be Airbnb. I have an empty house. Oh, it turns out there's a bunch of people who want an empty house, but I'm not going to call them. I'll just list it on Airbnb, and they handle the transactions. They handle the discovery. Like someone can discover my house on Airbnb, and they handle the payments and customer satisfaction and all that stuff. So and every business could be thought of that way, though. Like even a financial research service like I had an excess amount of knowledge and people with knowledge about stocks and investing. And then there's a lot of people who want to make money who have demand for that. And then a financial research service is a platform in the middle. And so think about a business in terms of that. Like, what can you control that there's an excess supply of? Or what do you have? Like, it could even be knowledge and information. What knowledge do you have that you have an excess supply of, or you think people want an excess supply of, and test out that need, and then the people on the other side who want that supply. Or another way is also really being obsessed about money. So, for instance, I actually really do like the process of thinking about structures that make money. So, for instance, right now, baby boomers are old. So they're retiring. So a lot of baby boomers own mom and pop kind of businesses. Do you know 80% of businesses out there just get shut down? They don't get sold. They don't go public. If you run a laundromat and you're 80 years old now and your kids are not interested in running the laundromat, you're just going to shut it down. So one business model, like if somebody just wants to make $1 million, here's what I always suggest. Like, find a boring business that you could buy for free. And so what I mean by that, I can go to the laundromat where the guy was just going to shut it. 80% of laundromats just get shut down. I'm using laundromats as an example, but there's also car washes, plant stores, medical practices, just a boring business like a welding company, whatever. So you go to the laundromat and you say, hey, I'd like to buy your laundromat, and say, look, they'll say, okay, well, we want $500,000. And then you say, well, okay, how about I give you $20,000, but I'll pay you $700,000, but I'll just pay you over 4 years. Because, you've already researched like the income and how much they make. And then you have ideas about how you could grow it to make a little more money. They're 80 years old. They're not growing their business anymore. You're younger and you could grow the business. And then you buy 2 laundromats, 3 laundromats. Because what happens is you buy a bunch of laundromats and you get synergies between them. Like, oh, suddenly washing machines are cheaper because you're buying them in bulk, and detergent's cheaper because you're buying it in bulk. And then also the market likes size. So the original laundromat you buy for, let's say they earned $200,000 a year, maybe you would pay $400,000, 2 times earnings. But as something gets bigger, let's say now you buy 5 of those laundromats, so now you're making $1 million. You could sell it not for 2 times earnings, but 5 times earnings, because as something gets bigger, the earnings multiple goes up.
Holy shit!
So the more so just buying a bunch of companies, even if you don't improve them at all, you naturally will make. So let's say you just bought 5 of those laundromats that were making $200,000 a year. So now you're making $1 million a year, and you bought them all for 2 times earnings. So you're earning $1 million a year, but you spent $2 million. But now because of the size is bigger, now people are willing to pay. People who are bigger than you, who are more aggressive about wanting to buy big laundromat companies, they'll pay 5 times earnings. So you just bought everything for $2 million, but now you can immediately sell it for $5 million. That happens all day long, all around the country. And people are making millions every day doing this.
Wow. And ladies and gentlemen, bookmark this piece of the podcast. Wow.
So that's like, if I was just raw, I'm going to make $1 million. I don't care about being Gary Vaynerchuk or anything like that. Like, I'm just going to make money. That's what I would do.
Hell yeah.
And then And then also I've seen the newsletter business is a great business. Like,
I looked into that one. Yeah.
I wrote a newsletter about stocks, and it has to put out a newsletter has zero cost, and people will pay, money for newsletters. There's a saying in the newsletter industry, and it's the information product industry: get paid, get laid, lose weight. So if you have knowledge about getting paid, which is finance and investing, or getting laid, which is that whole dating industry, and or losing weight, you could probably make money selling a newsletter. So a friend of mine. And you have to have knowledge about copywriting, which is the direct marketing techniques. And so a friend of mine, this was 10 years ago, he started a newsletter. It was called the Jesus Diet. And basically, like, what would Jesus eat? And, and he that's all he did. And he would quote the Bible, and he would have like diet tips every month. And there was a whole course and everything. And he made like $500,000 on it in like a month. And then moved to Medellin in Colombia and lives there still. Like,
wow, that's fucking awesome. On that. So, man, wow, it's so, man, I love talking to you. You're one of my favorite authors, and also thinkers. Thank you. So one of the things that I want to kind of touch back on here. So I've been running into this lesson a lot, which is like, just acquire a company that's already working. And for me, I've thought about potentially, Nick and I have talked about this as well. I've thought about like buying maybe a laundromat or something physical. I have a friend of mine out of Oregon, and he just bought like 2 car washes, and he just plays like Monopoly and just buys all this shit.
Oh my God. Car washes are the best business, because it's just, particularly like in a city where there's cabs, it's just all day long. They're going, the cabs or the Uber cars are just going through the car wash, and you just make a lot of money on every car. Like, the cost is water. Like, that's your cost.
But what's your take on owning something physically versus like the sexy digital product businesses? Like, for example, info products, selling courses,
like
or
a SaaS product or something.
SaaS, just because I'm trying to think of like lifestyle, for example. So when I talk to my friend, he's very successful, worth multiple millions of dollars, but he's so tied to his businesses and his location that he's like, sometimes he'll have to go to the car wash and fix some shit, and he's there for like multiple hours a day versus, he doesn't have the flexibility to just be like, I'm going to go to Medellin, for example. So what's your take on like acquiring maybe a digital business or like e-commerce versus boring old businesses?
It depends. Like, you just have to do a lot of research. Like, so I'm trying to find, there's 2 sites.
Is it like
Flippa.com, I think is one of the sites. Yeah.
Microacquire the next one?
Microacquire is SaaS specifically.
Oh, is it?
Like here's one.
I'm on Flippa right now.
Yeah. Now these are like a lot of SaaS businesses, but let me see if there's a good, and there's also empirebuilders.com.
Empire Flippers. I actually sold I had a book publishing business on Amazon, and I sold that for $100K on Empire Flippers 2 years ago.
Yeah. It's called Empire Flippers.
Yeah.
And so that's where you could, sometimes they don't always have the best deals, but that's where you can find like kind of e-commerce businesses, and you can look at all their financials like, oh, this one has a monthly net profit of $21,000. That means it makes $52,000 a year, and the price is 1.2 million almost. This is the first listing I'm seeing on Empire Flippers right now, and that's okay. So that's kind of 5.5 times earnings. That's a little too expensive. So you kind of shop around for a good deal, then you do due diligence and make sure the it's all real and that the earnings are going to continue even if the founder's not there. So that's a good way to buy like a digital business.
Would you recommend?
I'm not saying actually
physical.
Well, I think both could be good. You just have to make sure the earnings are very real, and it's only valuable depending on what you pay for it. So if something makes a consistent $20,000 a year, and you have some ideas to grow, but you don't know for sure if you could grow it, then you want to pay a low multiple of earnings. You want to pay 2 or 3 times earnings, and then there are people though who, again, like, they have funds set up that all they do is buy these businesses off of Empire Flippers all day long, and then they combine them together, and then they sell a big e-commerce company that makes $100 million a year. They sell it for, again, 10 times earnings instead of 2 times earnings. So,
wow.
So it's not. So the only thing is, it's harder to do due diligence on something that's just an information product or an e-commerce business. But if you look at all the financials and you make sure the financials are audited, but the problem with a physical business is, what if there's another pandemic? Like, a lot of physical businesses got hurt, like car washes, you had to get bailed out. Like, fortunately, there was a bailout, or your friend's car washes all were going to go out of business. So, but I don't think there's going to be another shutdown like that. I think the good thing is the more boring the business, the cheaper it is you can buy it, and the more likely it is you can get seller financing.
So if you had to say simply, like in a list, what's your criteria for an acquisition? Like if you could simply put it, and keep in mind that Omid and I are rookies, we're beginners.
Yeah, I would say the earnings have so there's let's divide it into two categories. One is a business you could buy, and the other is a business you could start.
Okay.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
So like, let's say, I'm going to start a Twitter for, left-handed people. So because there's 50 million left-handed people in the US, so there must be a big market. So the problem with a startup, and the reason why there's a saying 90% of startups fail, is because you don't actually know if there's going to be demand until after you start the business.
Yeah.
Like all your friends could say to you, "Oh my God, I'm left-handed. I would totally use that site if you made it." And then you go out and you raise money, like, everybody says they would use this site. And so all the VCs give you a check and you start this business. And then it turns out you send out a mass email to all the left-handed people. Nobody uses your site.
The best example of this is Quibi. Do you remember Quibi, the vertical streaming platform? They tried to be Netflix. They filmed all of this stuff on vertical. I think they raised 100 million or something insane.
Yeah, Jeffrey Katzenberg.
Yeah,
and a bunch of big guys.
And it looked like it was going to, and they had Christopher Nolan in limited series, like real A-list actors, and no one super said, we don't want to watch 2 hours on vertical. It's annoying.
So for instance, I like to think of it as inheriting demand. So for instance, I used to write for the Wall Street Journal. I used to write for Yahoo Finance. I know there's demand out there for people who want good information about stocks. And I know some people charge for it and some people don't. So I knew there was already demand, and I already had a big audience from social media. So I was able to inherit the demand of an industry I knew there was a lot of demand in. And I felt I was unique because I had sort of a unique social media group as opposed to many people in investing. So I was able to start that company. Or when I made websites for a living, and my first company was making websites for like American Express and Warner Brothers and all the record labels I made websites for. Yeah. And I knew there was a demand because people would I wouldn't hire people unless somebody hired me. So with AmericanExpress.com, it was just me doing the site, and finally it was just too busy, and so I hired somebody. And with a service business, so there's service businesses and product business. With a service business, like, I'm going to make a website for somebody, you don't have to hire people until there's demand. So that's one way to test demand. Now, what I could have done, which I didn't do because I didn't know anything about business, is that I could have converted it into a product company. I could have said, I'm making the software that's making the websites. But I didn't really understand that product businesses are valued for like 1,000 times earnings versus service companies are valued for like 6 times earnings. So that's a big difference. So I had to be like profitable, as opposed to product companies don't always have to be profitable. And because everyone is betting on the scaling with product companies. But that was, a service business, there's demand because you don't hire anybody until someone hires you. So, and if nobody hires you, you just do something else for a living. So, so that's how you find out demand.
And there's also, I don't know if you've done this, James, I've, launched products before where you just run Facebook ads to a landing page, and then, at checkout, you just refund everybody their money, or you just block the payment. And you have criteria going into it, and, you spend maybe $1,000, $2,000 on some ads and some creative, and you're just like, whatever. Like,
take my course on, picking up women or men or whatever. And but then you also have another one here, take my course on math, or here's another one, take my course on, poker, how to play the best poker. And then you see where people click, and like you said, you shut down. That's a good way to test demand. And then you shut down the other services that there is no demand for. I did that with the title of Choose Yourself. I had like 5 different titles I was choosing between, and I put Facebook ads up for each title. And Choose Yourself got like 80%.
What were some of the contenders, out of curiosity?
The Choose Yourself Era, ERA.
Yeah.
But that was my initial title, but I felt like I kept saying error, and I didn't, and then Tucker Max, a friend of mine, said, test out Pick Yourself. Ryan Holiday suggested some title. There was a couple other people suggested a title, and I tested all of them, and Choose Yourself worked the best.
Okay, so I just got a note from Omid. This is the beauty of, hustling. He has to jump because he has a call to get to.
Okay.
Which sucks because I know he doesn't want to go. But
well, thank you guys for having me on the podcast. I'm happy to come on anytime.
Man, this was awesome.
Well, James, this was an absolute pleasure. Where can people find you?
They can find me on your podcast.
Hell yeah.
It's going to be your most popular episode ever. People should just listen to this podcast episode. They should share it with all their friends.
Damn.
And don't go to any of my stuff. Just share this particular episode.
That's not going to happen. I'm going to link to everything, James, below. But James, I meant to what I said at the beginning, dude. You're literally one of my favorite people. I always tell Jam, like, dude, James is the, best known act that like not enough people know about, because I just get so much value from everything. Chopping it up with you today was friggin' awesome, man. So I hope you had fun, and thank you for this.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for inviting me on and for thanking me for this, and look forward to the next time.